Hello and welcome back to the Talking Wolves Transfer Podcast, a show that looks at all the Wolves news and rumours in more detail. I'm delighted to join by Dave. Dave, you're looking quite tired, mate. It's an early morning recording. How are you feeling?
Yeah, I'm very tired, but yeah, it's probably the earliest we've done a podcast, isn't it? But yeah, looking forward to it, mate. Still, although it's quieting down a little bit on the rumours, a lot of big moves going on. So yeah, looking forward to it, mate.
Yeah, we've got to give the fans what they want, haven't we, mate? It's an early morning podcast. About 8 o'clock we're doing it, which I know a lot of people listening. We're saying, "Well, I'm already at work at that time," but
there's only 8 o'clock in my day, I tell you.
That's good, and it definitely is in the morning. As Dave mentioned, there we're going to be talking about a whole host of things, including the Nunes move, the Gibbs-White move to Forest, Goncalo Ramos, and more reports emerging yesterday around Vitória midfielder Andre Almeida. But before we start with that, we have a sponsored message from one of our partners at Football Prizes, and they have a new prize live on their website this week. It's a Hwang Jimenez and Hwang Jimenez signed and framed Wolves boot. Looks a nice prize, that, doesn't it, Dave?
Yeah, different. Yeah, obviously you normally have the signed shirts and so on. Yeah, signed boot, different.
Lovely. And not only that, entrants will have the chance of winning either a £25 gift voucher for the club shop or a new Wolves shirt too. Entrance costs just £3.95. And if you use code TalkingWolves, you'll get 10% off during August. Competition ends at 7:30 on Wednesday, so head to footballprizes.co.uk to find out more or click the link in the description below. Right then, Dave, Matheus Nunes, let's get into it. Wow, what a signing. We saw your video with Alex, the Portuguese football expert, who gave us all the lesson on how to pronounce these players. I bet you couldn't believe you. Look, could you? I know you struggle. You struggle with John Smith.
He went on some mad tangents as well, to be fair. And I know some people have clipped up little bits and put it on Twitter as well. But yeah, I obviously got a gist of what he was saying, but there was some people in the comments saying they didn't have a clue who he's on about. I watched the clip back and he's like, Fab Silva, can we talk about Fab Silva? And I said, quick. And then he just carried on talking. So, yeah.
He's energy though, mate. He's one of those. I think he'd be one of those people, like, you'd love to go on a night out with him. Slight tangent away from what we're talking about, but he's just, I don't know. He just had great energy. But you did speak to him about the Matheus Nunes deal, mate. And what a signing for Wolves. It's, personally, I think it's the biggest signing since Fosun have come in. Like, Neves in the Championship was a great signing. So was Jota. But we brought a ready-made Champions League world-class footballer into the club in a position that and a position and a profile that we've been crying out for years. What are your thoughts on it, Dave? Are you as excited as I am to see him play?
Definitely. I still don't think it's kind of sunk in the caliber of player that we've signed. Yeah, the fact that one sort of, I was going to say moved so quickly, but I'm sure there's been talks and stuff going on in the background and putting the groundwork down for this transfer for a long time. But yeah, really excited to see how it goes. Like you said, we've been crying out for a almost box-to-box type midfielder ever since we've been promoted to the Premier League. I think that's possibly what they were hoping to get in the end of Dendoncker. And, Dendoncker's a good player, but probably doesn't offer that sort of pick up the ball from deep and let's get us 30 yards up the pitch. And I can, for as long as I can remember, Matt, when we first started doing a podcast talking about transfers or talking about players, that's literally the position and the role that we've been talking about for so long. He's probably not the typical build. He's not like a 6'3", 6'4" big, brick house that he's going to players are going to bounce off. But yeah, but he's a very talented young footballer, and I think we've just got to appreciate him whilst he's here. I know there's lots of whispers and rumours. I know Alex mentioned it on the video that he thinks Wolves will be a stepping stone. There was a big article from, I think it's Observador in Portugal, which sort of broke down the transfer and said basically there was some sort of mutual agreement between Wolves and the player that, the move is so we can get closer and in the eye of these bigger clubs a lot more. But people said that with Ruben Neves 5 years ago, Matt. So the fact that Neves is still here, the fact that now, Bruno Lage said it last year, if we want to keep top players, we've got to bring in more top players. For me, it sort of bodes well. And yeah, who knows? 2 more players maybe through the door. And I think pushing top 7 again, isn't unrealistic.
I don't think it is either, mate. And you know, we signed Nunes. Guedes has gone completely under the radar. I feel a little bit sorry for him because you know that's another fantastic
I was talking
signing.
about a lineup today this morning before we started with my brother, and he was like, "Oh, so who do you reckon's going to start against Spurs? Hwang, Neto, and Podence?" I was like, "Literally signed Guedes last week." He's like, "Oh yeah."
It does feel like it has gone under the radar a little bit, but I don't think that as long as we sign another striker who's gonna do us a job, I don't see why we couldn't push for Europe again, top seven. Especially with the Nunes signing too.
Mhm.
Some fans may be a little bit concerned at this whole stepping stone mentality, but I don't particularly mind it. I mean, look at the likes of Borussia Dortmund, who are a far bigger club than Wolves. I know they don't play in the Premier League, but that's their ethos. That's what they build their success off. Players will come there, they'll nurture them for a couple of years, get in the spotlight of bigger clubs, and they'll go for a much larger fee. It's nice, Dave, to hear some ambition in a player as well. Like, with all due respect to Wolves, I don't want to be playing at this level in 2 years' time. I want to be playing at the top, whether that's with Wolves or another club. And I think you need characters like that because they'll drag you over the line.
Yeah, for sure. And I think he's obviously got ambitions, and he's been told that he's going to be a starter. Whether that be on Saturday, I don't know, but he will be a solid starter for the team. But yeah, you've bought, it's not just Dortmund. There's a number of clubs around the world, and I think just as Wolves fans, we've been used to. I think we have been quite lucky in keeping our players. In regards to outs, I would say Diogo Jota is the only big sale that we've had since Fosun took over. One that we thought, oh my god, even at the time, to be fair though, I think a lot of people understood why we let Jota go, but we've been quite fortunate in the fact that we've been able to keep Jimenez when he was at the top of his game. Obviously, Neves is the obvious one as well. So these things all happen, and we were talking about this self-sustainable model for so long. We've not actually seen Wolves have any big sales as of yet, but I think with this Mendes pull still clearly a thing, I think we'll be in safe hands. If we ever do sell Nunes, I think it will be for a very healthy profit. And I think they've made that clear already. I've got full confidence that they'd be able to bring in somebody of similar caliber as well.
Yeah, and the fact that they're signing him for between 38 and 45 million, which personally I think is a snip in today's market for a player of such caliber. They're not going to be selling him for 50 million in a year's time.
No.
You're looking 80, 90 million.
Yeah.
So for them, it made sense. And looking at it from a pure investment point of view, they've bought an asset that they know after a couple of good years, his value is going to double. We would all, if we had the money to buy a house that we knew in a couple of years' time would double in value, you would 100% do it, wouldn't you? So it makes sense, but it also is nice to hear from a fan's point of view that they are investing money in these type of players. But we'll move on now to the next point, and it almost ties in with the Nunes sale, buying him for around about 35, 36 million up front, which is around about what we're going to get for the sale of Morgan Gibbs-White to Nottingham Forest. So Wolves have accepted a bid of £25 million up front for Gibbs-White from Forest, they've been chasing him all window. And it's also said to be between £7 and £10 million in likely add-ons, plus further ambitious add-ons that are quite difficult to achieve, such as Nottingham Forest staying up. To achieve, I'm only joking, which could take the deal up to a maximum of £42.5 million. Dave, I remember when we first started the season back up and we were talking about the Gibbs-White saga and having 2 years left on his deal. We were saying, if someone offers £20 million, you've got to accept. And here we are. Wolves have managed to wangle near enough £35 million out of Forest.
Yeah, it was, well, it came out of the blue yesterday, didn't it? The Athletic had put a story out sort of yesterday morning saying that there was no urgent need for Wolves to sell despite the amount of money that they'd spent, but Forest still had this strong interest in Morgan Gibbs-White, and they'd been looking at different options. They'd been looking at different players. They wanted to sign, strikers, and I thought, well, that's probably the Morgan Gibbs-White money, surely. And the fact they've come back in, and I think it shocked us all when the overall package got released.
Yeah.
And we saw 42.5 million, and Sky Sports jumped on it, and all the football pages jumped on it. And we were like, oh my God, that is ridiculous. Sort of got grounded a little bit when the actual figures came out, but it's still a very good overall price. I think, Matt, if you think about it, the 25 million straight away plus your 10 million in likely add-ons, which is probably going to be appearances. The chances of that might include like Forest staying up, like survival bonuses and stuff like that. I think 35 million pounds, basically what you've paid for Matheus Nunes, is very, very good business from Wolves. Morgan's a good player, very talented player. Still got, I think he's going to have a good future ahead of him. But for a player that hasn't completely proved it as of yet at Premier League level, isn't committing to a new contract yet at Wolves. In my opinion, still not found his best position yet at Wolves, because Bruno's almost, I think, tried to shoehorn him in that team. I don't think he's a right winger for how we play or want to play. I don't think it works. I think this is a very, very good deal from Wolves. And I would much rather be selling Morgan Gibbs-White. Yes, we've spent this money, and yes, they're saying, no, we don't really need to sell, but it's obvious we're still going to have to recoup some funds from somewhere. I would much rather sell Morgan Gibbs-White for this price than sell the likes of Neves at a stupid fee, Pedro Neto at a stupid fee, anybody else. I think where Morgan's playing, which is out on the right, I think we're pretty stacked right now in wide areas, in my opinion. You've got Adama if he stays. You've got Guedes. You've got Pedence. You've got Neto. You've got Hwang who can play out wide. You've got Chiquinho to come back from injury. I think it's a healthy area at the moment. So, yeah, good deal.
Looking at it from a purely financial perspective as well, and in particular, financial fair play, this window, you might think, bloody hell, Wolves have spent around 106 million already this window, and they've barely bought any money in. But if you look at FFP, which is done over a 3-year window, the last couple of seasons, we've not really spent much, have we? We've pretty much broke even, give or take a few million. This season, we've spent around 105 million pound. We've bought in 25 million pound up front for Gibbs-White. So you probably think, well, there's still quite a bit of a disparity there between the fee coming in and fee coming out. But because of something called amortization, it means that 105 million pound that Wolves have spent, because the contracts for those players are between 5 and 6 years, in terms of FFP, you would spread the cost of that. So in terms of Wolves' balance sheet for FFP this season, they've only put 21 million pound down, and it'll be another 21 next year and another 21 next year. So it's fantastic business, and it does help the fact that the last couple of years we've not really spent much. So perhaps Wolves are gearing up to this, mate. But you are right, Wolves haven't found the position for Gibbs-White, and I feel like this would be a theme that ran through the season. But I'm glad now, Dave, that they've acted and not had another Traore saga where it's, the player's not signing another contract. It's obvious that he doesn't want to sign another deal, so they have to pull the trigger and get rid of him.
There's no point in the club, and I think, I've mentioned it many times. There is probably, in hindsight now, there's no point in the club hedging their bets, thinking, right, if we give him a bit of game time, he'll sign a new deal in January. Because you give him 15 games or whatever before the World Cup, then you think, right, you sit down with Morgan, he says, nah, I still don't want to sign. You've probably lost a good 15, 20 million in value, because there's one, you've lost time on his contract, and two, there's a chance he hasn't been at top form, and three, there's a chance Forest have already spent that money that they had allocated for him anyway. So it was the right time. I think Wolves, I'm sure they considered this one quite carefully. But I think, from a Wolves point of view, it's a good time to say. I had a lot of people tweet me or message me saying, wow, like, how on earth are you getting this money?
I had Albion fans messaging me saying, how have you managed to pull that off?
Yeah. I think if you ignore the ambitious add-ons, which, as mad as it sounds, probably includes stuff like Forest qualifying for Europe and stuff like that, which I think with the amount of money they're spending is not too ridiculous.
No.
Because, you saw what we did. But if you include the likely ones, 35 million pounds, I think you'd take that every day of the week.
Yeah, absolutely. Like I said, it doesn't seem like he wants to sign a new deal. I think from the club, and I understand Morgan's standpoint too, he's had his fingers burnt with Wolves before. Nuno brought him back from a loan spell at Swansea, wasn't he? And said he was going to play him and didn't bother. So I understand from Morgan's standpoint, but from an outsider's perspective, the club have done absolutely everything this summer to make Morgan feel like the man. All the Marcoms that have been going out, giving him the captain's armband in Benidorm, making sure he's, first name on the team sheet. Bruno bigging him up in every press conference, saying he's a £50 million player. Well, whether they knew all along what they were doing, it seems a little bit of a stroke of genius, mate, because they've got close to that valuation, which we never thought they would.
No, and yeah, it's a good piece of business, and like I said, he's a good player, Morgan. But I think, yeah, it's probably time, the right fee, right time to move him on. We saw, things going on behind the scenes or whatever after Leeds away as well, and I think he's always going to get stick from a good a good percentage of our fans for stuff off the pitch rather than on the pitch. But yeah, he's been okay at the start of the season as well. He's been okay. He's not been the worst player on the pitch, but I don't think by any means he was been the best player on the pitch at the start of the season either. So, yeah, very good piece of business.
Yeah, and I mean, I've made it no secret. I didn't think in pre-season or at the start of the season he's been anything other than okay, like you said. I see a lot of fans and I think they pin all their hopes on him because I've seen him do well at Sheffield, and he's a localish lad, and they want him to excel. But I've just not seen enough. And whether he goes to Forest and tears it up remains to be seen. But I don't think we're going to be looking back personally, and he's making to bite me on the backside. I don't think we'll be looking back and thinking, bloody hell, like Forest had our pants down with that. He's worth 80, 100 million. But regardless of that, he's an academy graduate. It's a fantastic story for the academy, and genuinely wish Morgan all the best.
Yeah. I was going to quickly say as well, I know Forest fans are probably excited about it right now, but for me, in the back of my mind, I would be thinking Steve Cooper's got a lot of pressure on him now because he's hedged all his bets into Morgan Gibbs-White. Had him on loan at Swansea. Obviously, had a good success with him at the England under-17s. But this is a hell of a lot of money to spend on one player when you're newly promoted. So, yeah, there's a lot of pressure, I think, on Steve Cooper now that this one pulls off.
There is, but there was also quite a lot of pressure on Bruno Lage now, I think, because if he does get another striker and potentially another defender, this is his squad now. There's no excuses. Sure. This is Bruno's squad. He's got the players that he wanted in the positions that he needed. So now I finally think that this season we can judge Bruno for what it is. Last season he did well overall, considering it wasn't the players that he wanted to play. He's got his system. He's got the players he wanted. So now is the time that we can judge him. Moving on, mate, to one that again has been dragging on for some while. And it's Wolves' chase for Goncalo Ramos at Benfica, the young striker he's been playing really well for them since the start of the season. Was almost in Darwin Nunez's shadow a little bit last season, but this season he's their main man. And Wolves had offered a loan with an obligation to buy for around about 30 million euros. But Benfica did reject that proposal, and Wolves are yet to go back in with a fresh offer. It's not only Wolves that are interested, though. I know that Newcastle and also Southampton, who have held talks with Benfica, are also interested in the Portuguese striker. Dave, is this a player that you like?
Yeah, so we're probably going to contradict ourselves here a bit, Matt, because we obviously have spoken about him before. If we remember with the Dan Butler recruitment plan we did probably a couple of months ago now, we spoke about him, and the asking price at the time was £40 million, which we didn't know what situation Wolves were in financially. So we said, good player, but way too much money. Now, on the flip side, when you bought obviously the finances earlier, we're selling Morgan Gibbs-White for that amount of money. I know we spent a little bit of money on Collins, Guedes, and Nunes. But with the way he started this season, I'm warming to the idea of signing him a little bit more. It's been said that Bruno Lage has been, contacting the player. He's obviously managed the player before, and we're sort of seeing Bruno Lage have this sort of pull on players from Portugal. I think he's a fairly well-respected person and coach. I wouldn't be surprised to see this one go through. Like I said, we have spoke about this player before. I don't think in a bad light, Matt. I think we just like the actual financial side of things we were concerned about. But as a football player, I think he would be an asset to Wolves. And yeah, if we were able to get this one over the line, we're going to have a really, really strong squad overall.
Yeah. And we mentioned before that it... And I've tweeted saying I've seen this film before and I don't like the ending because I thought it was going to be another Fabio Silva where we get our pants pulled down for what is a prospect. I think he's further down the line than Silva. He's more developed. He's a bit older. He's got more first team experience. And that's not me saying that Silva's a bad player. I think he's a good player, but we did overpay for him. There's no beating around the bush. We overpaid. It was a golden handshake with Uncle George. But I've been really impressed with him in pre-season. I watched him against Kiev. I think it was Wednesday night, and he looks good. He looks like he's got a bit of everything. It just remains to be seen what that fee is going to be. Benfica look like they're reluctant to, that they are going to let him go. And they said that at the start of the season, but it's whether anyone can meet that valuation. But it's a lot of money, isn't it? For 30 million euros, it's a lot of money for still a bit of an unknown quantity. But watching him play, he does look a good player.
Yeah, it's a bit of a risk, and he could play sort of as a second striker. So I don't think playing sort of him and Raul at the same time is completely out of the question. But it's interesting that you've got Fabio out on loan, obviously doing okay. He's doing really well, and obviously if he continues to do so, you'd expect him to come back into the first team frame next season. Say for argument's sake, we do sign Goncalo Ramos this year. Where does that leave Raul next season? Is this sort of the next step? Is this going to be Raul's farewell season, depending on how he gets on? Because I don't think you can have three strikers of that caliber.
No.
I say caliber, all very similar, sort of probably playing time demands in the same squad next season. So very, very interesting to see what happens with that. But we definitely need a striker. I probably didn't expect it to be someone of that caliber. I was half expecting someone that was going to come in and just be happy to be a backup. Ramos might be happy, but I think for the amount of money that we spend on him, he's probably going to want to be knocking on the door for consistent first team starts, especially when he's scoring in the league and in the Champions League.
Dave, where are they getting this money from? Because the narrative in the media was that Wolves are self-sustaining, sell to buy, and I do still think that's the case. But the fact that they've gone and spent over 100 million already this window is very surprising. I know that Wolves have extended the borrowing arrangement that they've already got with Australian bank. I think it's Macquarie from February 2024 until June 2025. That's borrowing against future TV revenue, which if they do stay up as well, it's more than likely that that'll be extended to. The reason that and a lot of clubs do this, it's not just Wolves, and do use Macquarie. The reason that they use Australian banks is football clubs are quite high risk, especially for banks in England. And considering the small sum of money that they are borrowing in the grand scheme of things, it's really high risk. And no Bank of England wants to be known as the bank that bankrupted or put a certain club into administration. So that's why they use banks abroad. But it's I'd just like to know where this money's come from. I know there's questions about external investment and a few bandied around about Qatari investment, but listening to Liam Keane's podcast yesterday, the Express and Star, he believes that it's just a load of nonsense. But we've not heard anything, have we?
No. I don't know. There's a couple of things, because I think, number one, if the club went out and said, I don't think any club would do this, but if a club went out and said, right, yeah, we've got shitloads of money to spend this summer, then you've seen it with Newcastle. Personally, I think Newcastle are probably struggling to get in the players that they actually want, because people know they've got money. So, for Botman, they spent probably £5 or £10 million more on wages. They're going to spend a lot more money. So if Wolves went out to the press and says, yeah, money is no problem, like Jeff Shee has previously, then clubs are going to not be stupid to that. The self-sustainable thing, I think it's probably right to a degree. I think long-term, Fosun will probably want that, but I think at the same time, they're not. They're not stupid, because you look at the start of the window, and it was clear to everybody, Wolves fans, neutral football fans, that Wolves needed to strengthen the team. And if they've got to put their hand in their pocket, they will put their hand in their pocket. And I think they've made mistakes. They're still new. I would still say they're new to the football ownership game. There's owners that have been in the game for 15, 20 years. Fosun have only been in it for sort of 6 or 7 years. So, yeah, they're going to make mistakes. They have made mistakes. But I think when they know we need to, strengthen the team significantly, they'll put their hand in their pocket and sort it. It's just a shame that it's probably 2 or 3 years too late.
Yeah, but it's similar to the Gibbs-White facade, isn't it? You've got to almost have a bit of a poker face in the media. You can't let people know what cards you've got.
And I think that's what Jeff Shee has 100% learned, because he said at the start, we all go back to the Manchester City thing because we want to be as big as Man City. He's come back and like regretted that saying. He's come out and said money is no problem for Wolves. And I think that's where you've got to be careful. You've got to sort of, and that's probably why you don't see Jeff Sheet in the media as much anymore. And I know people moan about that, but it's for stuff like that, really.
Yeah, and you know what? The thing that really kind of gripes me is a narrative on social media where you've got to be. It's binary in thinking you've either got to be for the person or you've got to be against them. You can't criticise them when they've done something wrong and praise them when they've done something right. And I think this window, on the whole, they've got it absolutely spot on, bang on, perfect. But then you've got the people who are supporting folks and saying, like, oh, you've got to apologise. It's like, not necessarily. It's, you know, you shouldn't be binary. You should praise when they've done something well and, you know, lambast when they haven't. It's quite frustrating, really. But that's football, mate. Football fans, it's passionate. No one thinks rationally. It's all with emotion. Moving on to our last rumour, mate, which came out, I think it came out yesterday, but it's someone that we've been linked with for a little while, but nothing's been that concrete. But Wolves are interested in a Vitória midfielder, Andre Almeida, but also Porto are interested, but both clubs believe that Vitória are demanding too much for the midfielder. This is according to Pedro Sepulveda, who is a very, very reputable journalist, isn't he, Dave? He's a friend of Talking Wolves as well.
Yeah, he is now. He sent us a voice message the other day, so we're best mates now. Yeah, he's probably for Portuguese news, probably the best out there, to be honest. He's got fingers in a lot of pies over there.
Yeah,
so
he's partying with Silver and Pedence in our beef, wasn't he, during the summer?
Yeah, they were talking that maybe Sporting were going to go for Almeida as well as a replacement for Matheus Nunes. But that's someone that Ruben Amorim doesn't, like you sort of written here, doesn't have the same attributes to replace Nunes. But he's a good player again, bringing up Dan Butler's recruitment plan. He was somebody that we'd spoken about on that a little bit. I think he's a talented player. I think if you sign somebody like this, I think this is one again closer to the end of the window. If the player's not signing a new deal, Vitória realise they need to sell him, then you'll get him for a decent price. I think you sign someone like this, it probably allows the likes of Luke Kundal or whatever to go out on loan. And then I think you've got a really solid midfield five there. As you say, Neves, Nunes, Moutinho, then Donka, and someone like Andre Almeida. I think it's going to be a really good depth that we've not seen for a number of years at Wolves. So yeah, definitely want to keep our eye on because he's been linked for a long, long time as well.
I personally think he could be a Moutinho replacement. He's similar kind of build, I believe. I think he's only about 5'8", but I think if they bring him in and Kundal stays and then Donka stays, then Donka still could go this window. I feel like there's, sounds ridiculous, but too many players. I never thought we'd ever say that in the midfield position at Wolves. But like you said, Dave, we covered it on the recruitment plan with analyst Dan Butler, and he believed he would be a very good signing and a shrewd bit of business and would cost a fraction of what Nunes has cost. Possesses great passing and ball carrying quality. Still only a young lad at 22. 1 year left on his deal with Vitória, but they've got an option of an extra year, so call it 2 years. Is 10 million euros too much for a player of this quality, Dave? I remember speaking to Proxima Janada as well, the Portuguese football expert who's been on our channel a few times, and he said he's a really good player. So 10 million euros isn't too much, is it?
It doesn't sound a lot, especially when we're smashing, transfer records and so on this year. I don't know. I think Wolves probably look outside that top three in Portugal and think, right, what bargains can we get? Because Chiquinho cost, 4 million euros. And from the small amount we saw of him, he looked like a quality player. I think Wolves will just be very aware of other clubs. So I think as soon as, Wolves aren't daft. They've got the contacts. They'll know when another team has made an official inquiry about this player. So if Porto go in for him and it's 6, 7, 8 million, I think Wolves will probably try and match that. But for a player of that quality, and I think if the club believe he is good enough to be the next João Moutinho almost, or somebody that can fill the boots of João Moutinho at the club, then £10 million is a no-brainer.
Yeah, it frustrates me a little bit because we see these players leave the lesser known teams in Portugal to join Benfica, Sporting, Porto, and then they go for 50, 60 million to clubs across
Yeah.
Europe. Why can't Wolves get in before those teams?
Well, no, that's that when we signed Chiquinho, I think it was Aaron that we had on the video then, and
Yeah.
he said like they're starting to see it a little bit more now, where Benfica, Sporting Porto, they are the middleman, or traditionally have been the middleman in those transfers, and like you said, being able to flip and make 200, 300, 400, 500% profit on players. Whereas now there are clubs coming in and looking at the lesser teams in Portugal and being able to skip that middleman. Like for argument's sake, say Chiquinho started, ended the season quite well, had a really strong start to this season. He could have easily been valued at like £40 million or whatever. Let's say, for argument's sake, and we'd signed him for £4 million. Like, it's ridiculous. There's a lot of talent in that. He saw Nunes as well. Clubs had rejected him. I think I read on the Athletic that Leicester had rejected him 5 or 6 years ago when he was at Estoril. So you probably could have gone for less than £1 million then. And so I know he's not the player he was today, but there's a lot of leagues in the world like that, though, Matt. There's a lot of leagues where if you look outside of those sort of top Champions League teams, there's deals to be done.
There is, and I know when Sporting signed Nunes from Estoril, I think it was €400,000 they paid for him, with keeping still 50% of his economic rights. So I know that Sporting bought Estoril out of that for 500,000. So I mean, if they hadn't have done that, and it's usually predetermined, isn't it, Dave? You can buy us out for X amount.
Yeah, you know what? The best thing about that Nunes deal as well, I saw it yesterday, is that this happens with every transfer. I don't think people realise like a small percentage of the transfer goes to like old parent clubs and stuff like that. And I saw that his first club that he played for in Portugal are receiving it's like a Sunday League level team, like
1.4 million.
Yeah,
like that.
It's like a Sunday League team, and they're receiving that much money. It's absolutely mad.
I bet they're all still up.
Yeah, it's gone. The money's done.
Sorry, where's that club again? Just so I can avoid that.
Liquidated.
Bloody hell. I think we should call it a day there, mate. I've enjoyed that one.
Oh, thank you, man.
Yeah, like we always say, if you want to keep up to date with all the Wolves news and rumours, make sure you follow Talking Wolves on Twitter and the Wolves rumours section of talkingwolves.co.uk. Dave, where can people find you? Should they wish to find you?
So yeah, it's Dave as a party on Twitter. So DAVEAZZOPARDI.
I am M Cooper Wright on Twitter. We are Talking Wolves across all socials. And if you have enjoyed the video, let us know in the comment section down below. Like the video. If you're new here, please subscribe. And until next time, we'll see you very soon.